Okay, today we're going to talk about suspended chords, what they are, and how they're used, and how they're constructed. A suspended chord is really, it's been around for a long time. I mean, Bach used them a few hundred years ago. So, but in jazz, we have upper extensions of the suspended chord, and I'll get to that in a second. But let's just take a, rather than use C, let's go take an F major triad, FAC. Okay, we know that it's a major third with a minor third on top. Built-in thirds sounds like this. Okay, the third of the chord is the most important thing because that's what's going to be suspended. And when you suspend it, you move it up a half step. So, the most basic F sus chord, or any chord, any sus chord for that matter, you can think of as a major third with a suspended third. I mean a major triad with a suspended third. And when we do that, we get move up a half step. It has to be B something because it's in the scale F G A B flat C. And there you have an F sus chord right there. And here's how it sounds. Now that particular chord is used a lot in pop music, and you hear guitar players, play that kind of thing. In jazz, we don't necessarily voice it like that, but if you want a definition of a sus chord, sus triad, I guess you could say, that's what it is right there. So let's go back, erase some of this, and we'll write out a little more complicated suspended chord. Now remember that you can have suspended seventh chords, like G7 sus or C7 sus. And if you've been following these videos at all, you remember that when we read chord symbols, we read from left to right. So let's take a chord such as C7 sus. Now let's take G7 sus. And what I'm going to do is I'll voice it out on the piano like you may voice it out, or I'll voice it on the staff like you may voice it out for instruments. Okay, so let's start with the root, put a G down here. Now remember that a 7 chord is a 4-note chord. So we need the notes G, C, D. I won't write them here, but if I did, you would have the root. The sus is the C because we raised the B up a half step. D is the 5th, and F is the 7th. So let's voice it out here, make it sound a little better. This particular interval is a 7th, so having the root in 7th is a nice place to be there. Okay. Okay, remember that C is our suspended note. So even if you just played these 3 notes, you get kind of a suspended sound. Okay, obviously that's a G7 chord with just the root, 3rd, and 7th, but here's a suspended as I wrote it. You can hear how it just sounds like there's no quality there, it just kind of floats there. It suspends. Okay, so if we want to add the 5th, we can add it right there. Okay, but in jazz we usually do a little more than that, and this would be a G7 sus, by the way. Okay, now a lot of times these types of chords, piano players will tend to add the upper extensions and just go up, like the 9th and the 13th. Okay. Now you may wonder why won't the 11th work in this? Well, let's take a look at this. The sharp 11, if we did add a sharp 11, is C sharp. The 11th is C, so we already have it in the chord. If you want to think of it as maybe a G, possibly you may see a chord symbol G11, and that might mean a G 9 sus chord or 13 sus chord or whatever. Okay, so let's voice that out. G, 7th. Remember the larger intervals larger intervals work well down there. Okay. How about, well, let's put the C there so we have the basics. There's our suspended note. Okay, and let's just add them up. How about the 9th there? I'm sorry, 13th. And how about the 9th on top? This would be a G 13 sus. So remember, always start simple and just keep adding on. It's kind of like having a recipe and adding more spices. Okay, so here we could have just added an A and not the 13th first and just had a G9 sus, and here's what that sounds like. Okay, a little more flavor, but when we add the 13th it even sounds better. So you might have a 5-note ensemble. Let's say the trumpet player was right here. Alto, tenor, trombone, and bari sax. Something along those lines. That would be a good G13 sus voicing with A in the melody. Now we can certainly revoice this, generally keeping that there. That's kind of our foundation. But we can move it around. A lot of times, before I leave you on this video, a lot of times what you'll see in pop music is, let's see, whoops, F over G. And if you think about it, it really is a G9 sus, this chord here. Because here we go, we'll write a G, here's F, A, and C. This particular chord is an F chord with a G in the bass. That's all that means. You may see that in a pop lead sheet or something like that. Generally, with jazz, we tend to stay with the usual notation of these, but you may see that and just think of it as a G9 sus, and that's what it sounds like. And I can invert that F chord. So I'm playing lots of notes of an F chord above that. Actually, 6 notes. Okay, but it still sounds like a G9 sus chord. Okay, so I hope that cleared up some things on the suspended chords, and now you know how have a little bit of a clue how to voice some of those things. Remember the larger intervals at the bottom, and then when you get in the right hand on the piano anyway, or the upper parts of a group, you can put more of those together as far as closer position goes. So, hope that helped you, and we'll see you at the next video.